I never imagined that the flickering porch light, just a bulb burning out, really could turn into the most unexpected and moving experience of my life. That evening, the sky was soft with twilight, the kind that lingers just long enough to blur the edges of things. Inside, the house smelled faintly of chamomile tea and old books, and through the kitchen window, I could hear the quiet hum of crickets beginning their nightly song. The carpet beneath my slippers held the last warmth of the afternoon sun. Something changed that night. I still remember how still everything felt right before the knock came. I was 71 when it happened, living alone in the same house I'd shared with Robert for 38 years. He'd been gone 7 winters, taken by a sudden stroke one rainy April morning. Since then, my days settled into a rhythm so familiar it no longer needed naming. I woke at 6:30, made tea, watered the fern on the windowsill, folded the newspaper, even though I rarely read it. The house had grown quieter over the years, not from disrepair but from lack of use. Too many rooms for one person, too much space between footsteps. The creak of the 3rd floorboard near the hall closet became a sound I recognized like a voice. One late October evening, as I reached for the porch switch after dinner, the light sputtered once, twice, then died completely. I stood there in the dark, hand still on the wall, feeling more unsettled than the moment warranted. I told myself it was just a bulb, but something in me hesitated to climb the ladder alone. So I picked up the phone and called the electrician whose name I'd saved from a neighbor's recommendation months ago. When he answered, his voice was calm, unhurried, and I found myself saying, "Could you come tonight? It's nothing urgent, but I'd feel better if someone looked." He said he'd be over in 20 minutes. I hung up, smoothed my cardigan, and waited. He arrived just as dusk deepened into night, parking a modest van with peeling decals at the curb. He was somewhere in his late 50s, I thought, gray at the temples, but strong in the shoulders, the kind of man who moves through the world without needing to announce himself. He carried his tools in a worn canvas bag, not flashy, not hurried. His hands were steady as he pulled on work gloves, and when he turned to greet me, his eyes held a quiet warmth, like embers under ash. "Evening," he said. "Cold one coming." I nodded, offering tea later if he liked. He smiled slightly, not wide, but true. "Appreciate that," he said. What surprised me wasn't his politeness. It was the way he listened. Not just to my words, but to the spaces between them. When I mentioned the light had been flickering for days, he didn't rush to fix it. He paused, tilted his head slightly, as if hearing more than electricity. The air inside shifted when he stepped across the threshold. I stayed in the living room, close enough to see, but not in his way. He worked methodically at the fuse box near the front hall, and I could hear the soft click of his tools, the low hum as he tested connections. There was a scent of linseed oil and dry earth clinging to his jacket. I found myself standing by the bookshelf, straightening volumes I'd alphabetized only that morning. My fingers lingered on the spine of a poetry collection Robert used to read aloud. I boiled water for tea, not because I wanted it, but because the ritual gave my hand something to do. The room felt smaller with us both in it, not crowded, but full. Full in a way I hadn't realized it had been missing. At one point, he glanced up, caught my eye, and simply nodded. No words, just acknowledgement. And yet, it felt like a conversation. When he finished with the fuse box, he asked if I'd noticed any other issues. The basement wiring, perhaps, or the outlet in the kitchen that sometimes sparked. I hadn't, but I said yes anyway, not wanting the silence to return so soon. He knelt by the counter, removed the cover plate, and began testing wires. The rain started then, soft at first, tapping the roof like fingers drumming. We spoke of small things, the storm rolling in, the age of the house, how few homes were built with copper this thick anymore. Then he said, "You can tell a lot about people by how they care for old things." I paused, spoon hovering over the sugar bowl. Something in his voice, measured, gentle, carried more than the sentence suggested. I stirred slowly and said, "I suppose I've been keeping things as they were more out of habit than hope." He looked up, not with pity, but recognition. "Habit keeps us going," he said. "But sometimes, it's okay to wonder what else might fit." The rain kept falling, steady now, pooling on the driveway. He offered to leave, but I heard myself say, "The soup's already warm. If you're hungry." He didn't hesitate. We sat at the kitchen table, 2 mugs of broth between us, steam rising like breath in winter. Neither of us rushed. We watched the rain slide down the glass, distorting the streetlight into golden smears. Time didn't stretch, it softened. An hour passed like 10 minutes. Or maybe it was the other way around. He told me his name was Daniel. He'd been an electrician since he was 22, took over his father's business after he passed. Divorced 8 years ago. 2 daughters, grown, living across the country. They call every Sunday, he said. Same time, same questions. I answer. They hang up. I eat dinner alone. I nodded. Robert used to set the table for 2 even when I traveled, I said. Said the house felt unbalanced otherwise. We laughed, quietly, not at the sadness, but at the truth of it. The way loneliness isn't always loud. It's in the extra spoon left in the drawer, the second cup automatically poured. We talked then, really talked. Not about grief as tragedy, but as presence. How losing someone doesn't erase the shape they left in your days. How companionship isn't about romance, but about being known. I told him about the quiet ache of mornings, how I sometimes speak aloud just to hear a voice. He told me about driving past couples at diners, not with envy, but with a kind of tender curiosity, as if watching a language he once spoke fluently. I don't need saving, he said. Just someone to notice the lights flickering. And I understood. It was the recognition of loneliness meeting loneliness, not to fix each other, but to see each other clearly. We sat in silence after that, not empty, but full. The rain eased. The house held its breath. Then, as he stood to gather his coat, he reached across the table and gently covered my hand with his. Just for a moment. Warmth spread through my palm, up my arm, settling somewhere behind my ribs. His touch wasn't asking for anything. It was simply saying, asterisk, I'm here. You're here. This is real. Asterisk, I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let it be enough. And in that stillness, I realized I hadn't felt seen in years. Not truly. Not until that night, in my dim kitchen, with a man who fixed lights and understood silence. He buttoned his coat, thanked me for the soup, said he'd check the attic wiring next week if I wanted. I nodded, walked him to the door, watched through the glass as he climbed into his van, headlights cutting through the wet street. When he drove away, I stood in the hallway, looking at the porch light, steady now, glowing softly against the dark. It wasn't just the fixture that had been repaired. Something in me had shifted, too. A quiet reawakening, like a plant turning toward the sun after a long winter. It is never too late to feel seen. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and write in the comments which city you are listening from. It means a great deal to us.